Welcome to In the News for September the 27th, 2024. I am Brett Burney from appsandlaw.com.
And this is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD. Good morning, Brett.
Good morning, Jeff. It's been a week that you have had two brand new shiny objects.
I have.
One is the iPhone 16 Pro Max. We'll get to that in a moment. I would like to know, how has it been this past week with your brand new shiny Apple Watch 10?
It has been great.
Good.
I
didn't expect anything less, but I had to ask.
Yes. I did my review on Monday of this week, and I spent a lot of time in that review because I was thinking a lot about this watch.
Yeah,
I will tell you, this to me, we always say the latest is the best. I know we say that every time that they come out with a new product, but sometimes you feel like, this is really a good one. Like this one is really a big good one, as opposed to just a year over year. It's better than the year before. And I really think that the Series 10 stands out. I love this thing. It is my all-time favorite Apple Watch, and it comes at an interesting time because, as we'll get to in a second, you really do have a choice right now between the Ultra and the Series 10, and you need to make that decision. And I talk about that. So, just to get into it, when I was thinking about the Series 10, because it has a new design to it, it's thinner, it's got the big screen, I couldn't help but sort of start by doing a walk down memory lane of like, how did we get here? We had that original Apple Watch that came out that was so iconic and at the time was fantastic. But if you ever look back at an original Apple Watch nowadays, it's funny because like the screen, the display portion of the screen is really so small. And the reason Apple was able to fudge it, because since it was against a black background and it had this huge black bezel, when you looked at it, you could sort of kid yourself into thinking, oh, it's this nice screen. But the reality is the screen's really small. In fact, there's one picture that's in here that came from the Apple website, which shows they say the Series 3, but that's the exact same size as the original Apple Watch compared to what they have today. And you see how the bezel is so much less, and the the display portion is so much more. It's funny. So you have that original one. And then it
really is like looking at an original iPhone. Just quickly, Jeff. Whenever you pick up an original iPhone, I look at that and I'm like, what in the world were we thinking? How could I even operate it? But I remember in 2007, Jeff, both of us looked at that and be like, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And it's just amazing to see that evolution. But I'm glad that it's coming to the watch as well.
Yeah. So we had the original one, and a couple of years it was the same design, and then the 4 through the 6, that was making the display a little bit bigger. That was nice. And then you had the 7 through the 9, which is the stage that we just came off on, which was a really nice stage. Apple really reduced the bezel and had a nice bigger screen size, and they introduced the case. They made the case a little bit larger, which they've done over the years, and that was a really, really nice size. But this Series 10, this is the fourth sort of big change. And they have, again, when the Ultra came out last year, everybody was like, wow, the case of it is so much bigger, but the display is so much bigger. And that's one of the things people, I know you too, love about the Ultra is that big display. Apple has managed to get that same big display of the Ultra and put it on the Series line. In fact, technically, it's a tiny, tiny bit bigger than the Ultra display if you count all the pixels, but not in a way that your eye really can count. Suffice it to say that you get that same big display on both watches. But the big difference is that when you look at the Series 10 versus the Ultra, which is showing there, the Series 10, it extends that display so far out to the edge that it sort of curves on the edges a little bit, and it's got a really small bezel. Whereas on the Ultra, because it's a completely different type of watch, you have a little bit more of a bezel, and then you have like the case, a little bit of space for a case. And there's a reason for that. And because the Ultra, if you drop that Ultra, or if you're wearing it and you hit it against, the mountain that you're climbing or something like that, you want to have that protection. And so the Ultra has that flat screen, and it's protected at the edges. There's a reason for it. It makes it more durable, but it also makes it more bulky sort of around the sides. And then, of course, up and down, the Ultra is considerably thicker, as that picture you're just showing. It just makes it so clear. And so I was wearing the, and we'll probably talk about this separately, but because my former watch broke about a month before, I ended up trading in a bunch of watches at the Apple Store for the last few weeks. And so I ended up trying an Ultra 2 for almost 3 or 4 weeks total. And I spent a significant amount of time with it. Otherwise I had really just seen Ultras on other people. When you visited New Orleans, I saw yours in your wrist. I've only seen it a little bit, but after spending a considerable amount of time with the Ultra in August and September, I understand it. I see why people like that watch, but it's
Right.
big. It really is. Whereas the Series 10, it's so nice because it's just
Yeah.
it's so
I'm a little
svelte.
jealous. Yeah.
Not only is it thinner, but it's hard to tell on the side-by-side picture that you're showing that's in the middle of the screen right now, but the
Right.
bottom of it is actually the Series 10 actually fits just a little bit closer to your wrist than the Ultra
Oh,
does, even though the sort
okay.
of there's that part on the bottom of the Apple
All
Watch
those
which is sort of
sensors.
curved
Yeah.
with the sensors in it exactly that detects your blood flow and all the other things that it senses through there. But that part's actually it's just a tiny bit closer with the Series 10 because of the way it fits. And then of course the watch itself is thinner. And so you end up with this watch that just really feels like it's really close to your arm.
Mm-hmm.
You can sense that it's not, as far out as any of the prior models are, all the way back to the very first Apple Watch. I love it. I really do. This is to me, this is the best of all worlds. You get a big display, but you don't have a watch that feels so big on your hands. So just in terms of like the aesthetics of it, I really, really, really love it. So then
You
there's
did
some
so
other
good.
issues. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
I was just going to say, you did so good in this review. And the one thing I wanted to ask you about, because I remember you were always good or intent on getting the stainless steel model of the Apple
Mm,
Watch in the past, Jeff. But this time well, I don't even know if it's available now on the stainless steel, but you went with the titanium, the natural
yeah.
titanium, which is what I have on the Apple Watch Ultra. And it sounds like from your review, you're a fan of the titanium now, because it seems like it's even a little maybe less weight. So not as thinner, it's not as thick, it's less weight as well, and that's only got to be a good thing too.
Sure. So, in terms of finishes, the least expensive Apple Watches use an aluminum case, which is the same thing that the
Right.
least expensive
Right.
iPhones have traditionally used. Aluminum is a nice material because it's very light. It's, one of the lightest of all the materials that Apple ever uses. But for me, just the look of the aluminum Apple Watch, it's never really appealed to me that much. Even
Yeah.
the ones that have colors. That was another one of the watches that I tried over the last 6 weeks. For a while, I was trying a Series 9 with aluminum case. And it's fine. I mean, again, a lot of people,
It's
so many people
fine.
wear them. It's really good.
Right.
But for me, because I consider my Apple Watch to be jewelry, I sort of preferred the look of the shiny stainless steel. And so when I wore the Ultra, and you're right, the Ultra does have titanium, but it's actually very different because the titanium on the Ultra, as you know from looking at your own hand, is sort of like a brushed sort of look to it. I mean,
Yeah, that's
it
exactly
really looks
right.
like
You're right.
titanium.
Yeah.
Whereas what Apple has done for the first time with this Apple Watch is they have a polished titanium, and you can see,
Ooh,
from the
shiny.
picture in the middle, it's shiny.
Yeah.
Exactly. And to me, the difference between a shiny titanium Series 10 and a shiny Apple Watch of any of the earlier models with stainless steel, my eyes can't
Right.
tell the difference. I mean,
Okay. Okay.
holding
Good.
up next to each other, there's at the tiniest difference you could see maybe in the store, but essentially it's the same thing. So if you have liked the look of the shiny stainless steel, you get the exact same look with the titanium. But the advantage is titanium is so much lighter, not as light as aluminum, but so much lighter than
Yeah.
the stainless steel that the end result is what I have on my wrist, Brett, is a watch that looks essentially the same as my old stainless
Uh-huh.
steels that I've worn every single year since the Apple Watch original one. And yet it's so light. I mean, it's like it's air. There's just nothing there on my
That's
wrist.
incredible.
It's
Yeah.
it's much like it's the big size without the shape of the Ultra. It's the shininess of the stainless steel without the
Wow.
weight of it. And
Okay.
it's
Okay.
titanium is super durable, which is why they use it on the Ultra like you have. So I mean, it's a great material for protecting it and stuff. So it's another one of these. It's like the three bears. It's the perfect, this is the one that's just
It's
right there in the middle.
it's the
And
Goldilocks
something
of
else.
Apple Watches.
Exactly. It's something
Well,
else that I really love
you
about
just
it.
quickly say in here a 45 millimeter stainless steel Apple Watch Series 9 weighs 51.5 grams. A 46 millimeter titanium Apple Watch Series 10 weighs only 41.7 grams. I mean, we're
Yeah.
talking about microscopic measurements here a little bit, Jeff, but that's 10 grams less.
Yeah.
That's really pretty amazing for some of these things, from that difference there. I mean, that's a big leap, like you said.
It's like
I mean, you got to
20%,
feel
yeah,
that.
less.
Yeah,
Right, like
that's
20% less.
crazy.
And yet the Apple Watch, the body of it, it's technically larger, right? Because I went from a
Right.
45 millimeter case measured top to bottom to what is technically a bigger
That's pretty
case. So you would
incredible.
think just being bigger, it's going to have to be way more. No, it's going to actually weigh less. So everything about the real physical design about it, I love it. So then
Good.
you get into, the other differences if you're trying to decide of, what to do. Nowadays Apple is they're continuing to sell the Ultra, which the Ultra 2 came out last year. They're still selling it this year. The difference is that they've made this really nice looking black version of the Ultra 2 that some people sort of call the Black Man watch, the Batman watch, because it looks really, really cool, like something Batman would wear. And then you have to sort of weigh, until a couple weeks ago, if you wanted to get the best Apple Watch Apple made, it was the Ultra. Now, the Ultra was also the most durable one, but it just happened to have the best features. Now you have a choice. If you want the best Apple Watch, you can get the best in the Series 10, or you can get the best in the Ultra, and you need to decide, do I want something that's incredibly durable like the Ultra, or do I want that extra battery, which is the main reason that most people I think are going to go for the Ultra, is because you get twice the battery life. Or do you want something that's just it looks nicer in your hand, it's less obnoxious on your wrist? And for me, I mean, it's a close call. You can make an argument for either one. I've tried them both, but I really like having the thing that's just a little bit smaller. The only thing that I really miss, I mean, I don't miss things like the Ultra has the action button on the side. It's nice. I did use it. I used it for a flashlight. In a perfect world, would I love to have an action button in my Series 10? Sure, I would. But it's okay. Maybe they'll add that next year. The Ultra has that siren in it that if I'm lost in the middle of the woods, I can hold it down and make a loud siren. Or if I'm in the middle of downtown New York City and I feel unsafe, I could press the siren. I mean, I guess that's a nice thing to have. We don't have it, but those are just minor things that I really don't miss. The big thing is the battery life difference, and I think that's something that people can understand. Is, do you want something that's really big, it's going to have twice the battery, or do you want something that's really small? And Apple has made that choice a little bit easier because the newest Series 7 the Series 10, excuse me, can charge faster. And so you get the same amount of charge. What used to take like 45 minutes, you can now get in 30 minutes, or what used to take like 10 minutes now takes closer to 5. And I'm actually noticing it, Brett, that every once in a while, typically I will just charge my Apple Watch. Lately, I've been wearing it all night long. So if I want to wear it to go to bed at night, I might put it on the stand before I go to sleep, just for a tiny bit, 5 minutes. And then when I wake up in the morning and I take a shower and get ready to go, then I put it on the stand, and that's there for, a good 20, 30 minutes, whatever, it's there. And that's more than enough to charge it, because with the faster charger, it really does charge nice. And, every year when I get a new Apple Watch, you always get another charging puck because it comes with the watch. And so over the years, I've actually gotten, you just sort of, they accumulate throughout your house. And the newest charging pucks are the ones that can do the fast charging. So for me, for example, the computer where I work at home, I had one of my really old Apple Watch chargers there. And so I took that out of the USB port. I took the one that came with this new watch. I plugged it into the USB-C port. And now at my computer, if I'm sitting there and working and I'm like, what, for 5 or 10 minutes, let me just, charge up my phone, it can get a substantial amount of charge in 5 or 10 minutes. So I do have to think about charging with the Series 10, which is not something that you need to think about as much with the Ultra.
What I wanted to ask.
But it's not that big of a deal.
But now you're wearing it overnight, right? This past week,
I'm wearing it overnight.
The Series 10 overnight. So,
absolutely.
I mean, it is a better battery than what you were dealing with in the Series 7 that you had before.
Yes.
But you can tell that it's not quite as big as what you were experiencing with the Ultra 2, which, by the way, you wrote a great review of that when you were having it as well. So you can tell that it's just not quite at the capacity as the Ultra 2, but you are still going longer and sleeping, having that on while you sleep overnight, right? It's just now you can charge it a little quicker when we need to.
As you know, Brett, I mean, if you wear the Ultra overnight and you wake up the next morning and it still says what, like 70%, it's huge.
Pretty
but
much,
when you wear you wear this one at night and I wake up the next morning and maybe it says 35%, but I stick it on the charger and 20 minutes later, I'm all the way up. So
you did a great job at this bottom of the Series 10 review here. You did do a Series 10 versus Ultra 2. So I just wanted to tell anybody, if you are looking at both of these and trying to decide, Jeff, I thought you just did such a great review, a great angle here of comparing them, even at the very bottom where you even linked to Mark Gurman, who, by the way, decided to go with the Ultra 2 Black, like the Batman Black, instead of the Series 10. And he gave some bullet points here, some of which you kind of agree with and some you don't. But, pretty much it just comes down to the battery. Although he talks about the modular Ultra watch face, which I'm still such a
Which I miss. Fan of. I mean, it's so silly for me to be jealous of a watch face.
Yeah, I know.
But I totally am. I love that watch face. There's totally enough space for it. There is no reason other than Apple just wanting the Ultra to be special. I really wish that, and come up with a different name for it, but I wish they would bring it. I guess Yes, Mark also points out that the Ultra is brighter, which is true. I mean, if you're outside on a sunny day, I'm looking out my window right now. It's a sunny day in New Orleans. If I was walking around the streets and having that Ultra 2 on that goes up to 3,000 nits, yeah, it's a little bit brighter and easier to see than the Series 10, which is 2,000 nits. But again, that's not something you notice very much because most of the time I'm inside, not outside. So there's definite advantages, but.
I don't want to take you away from the map, but I just want to tell you quickly what you were doing. Another thing you linked to was these 25 hidden features in watchOS 11, and one of them specifically was, let me see if I can find it down here, that you can now add to the modular ultra watch face the widget around the edge of the watch face. Did you see this in here? I don't know if I can find it in here. But
it is in the list. Vitals. You're right.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. It's at the very bottom here. Yeah, the bezel now, because it used to be I could do seconds or I could do the like height and
that's right.
And
elevation,
it's like neither one of those elevation, neither one of those are really cared about. But now that they added the ability to put vitals as the widget that goes around the bezel of the watch, I'm like, thank you, like that's so great. I did that immediately this morning when I saw that you put that in. So anyway, okay, anything else on the watch before we jump over maybe to the iPhone here? But this is such a great review. I'll make sure, obviously I'll put it in the show notes here.
I mean, I will mention with all the newest watches, which includes the Ultra 2, but also the Series 10, you have the new sensor to detect sleep apnea, or at least it uses the existing sensors to detect sleep apnea. So that's something that's one of the reasons that I'm wearing the watch every night, is when you wear the watch at night, it can do the Vitals app. It can detect sleep apnea after you've been wearing it for a month. I haven't been wearing it for a month yet. So it's got that new feature. But, suffice it to say, to come back to the big picture, the Apple Watch is definitely something that you do not need to update every year, not even close. But, it is something that it's nice to update every couple of years, because eventually the batteries do sort of get, bad, which is why, and mine actually died, my old Series 7. So but if you're one of those people that you're like, I have a Series 5, 6, 7, is it time to upgrade? Yeah, I think this is a good year to upgrade, because it's a brand new style. It's got lots of new advantages to it. Last year, I would have said just the opposite with the Series 9. In fact, I did not upgrade last year. And a lot of other people, it's like, unless you wanted to make the jump to the Ultra, which is a different type of watch, last year, it was a fine upgrade, but, not. But this is one that, I think this is a good year to upgrade. And so if you feel like your watch is old enough and you want something new, nothing but a big thumbs up for me for the Series 10. It's just great.
Yeah, I mean, it is a big leap, as you do a great job in talking about here, even from the 7, 8, 9 to the 10. I feel like if you've got a 7, it's almost like, you're due. Go out and buy yourself something nice and go to the Series 10. If it's the 8 and 9, I feel like I'm a little bit more on the fence. Jeff, what do you think?
I agree. I would wait on those. Yeah, I would wait on those, because those are still very good watches, and give it a little bit. Right. But when you get to be 3 or 4 years out, then it's probably about time to start thinking about it. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well done, my friend, on this review. I think this is really, really, really great. And you even just quickly on those sensors, I mean, the sleep apnea is there, but it sounds like you got a little bit of feedback after you wrote this today from a couple of folks that thought they were going to have some access to some of the other sensors. And more specifically, I'm talking about the blood one from Massimo.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay. Yeah. I think one of the things that talk about that here a little bit. Yeah, go ahead.
So Apple has this lawsuit between them and Massimo, where, Massimo is a company that's been around since the 1980s, that, they do all sorts of health sensors and stuff like that. And there's a dispute, technically Apple has sued Massimo, but Massimo won one of the battles in this big, long war of litigation that prevented Apple from selling in the United States watches that contain the blood oxygen sensor. So what Apple is doing is, like, the Series 10 that I have on my watch right now, it has the blood oxygen sensor in it. And if I had purchased the same watch in, France, I'd be able to use it. But in the United States, it's just turned off. And so everybody has been waiting for this litigation to end. And the significant thing, or potentially significant thing, that happened this week is the president of Massimo was involved in. He's kicked out, and it wasn't because necessarily of the battle with Apple. It was because of a proxy battle. There was this hedge fund that owned a bunch of the stock, and they had a battle over who's going to control the company, and he didn't have the votes. It's, I'm sure, something for one of these corporate, books or something like that. But the hedge fund has taken over the company. But you always wonder, when someone else takes over a company, they're going to say, now I'm the new sheriff in charge. Let me do things a little differently. Are they going to be more willing to settle with Apple or somehow resolve the lawsuit. So that's one factor. And another factor is there's a bunch of different lawsuits between Apple and Massimo, but I think that they're all set for trial. And I know at least some of them are set for trial next month. And you and I both know from being around litigation, Brett, that the number one time that cases resolve is on the eve of trial, right?
Trial.
I mean, that's always when it happens. And so we are literally at that stage where just this week, Apple filed their jury charges. They filed their verdict form. Massimo did too. We're at that stage where they are just getting ready for trial. And so with the new person in charge of the company, with this, you just got to think that we might be weeks away from this dispute resolving itself. Gosh, I hope so. And then wouldn't that be nice? Because like I said, you mentioned, somebody wrote me earlier this week, said, I wasn't aware of this dispute. I just bought a new Apple Watch, and where's the blood oxygen thing that I've been checking, so that's a little frustrating. So hopefully that will resolve soon.
Let's go to the article that I already kind of mentioned here, because I thought this was so good. 25 hidden features in watchOS 11. So even if you do have a Series 7 or an 8, 9, or 10 or Ultra 1 or 2, you can upgrade to watchOS 11. And this past week, Jeff, I did upgrade everything, even my Mac, my iPhone, my iPad, the watch. I think my Apple TV is already updated. But watchOS 11, I got to tell you, I mean, immediately I couldn't see a whole ton of differences with this. But reading through this article, I'm so glad you linked to it. I already told you, I made like 3 or 4 different changes this morning already on like what I can do. I mean, talking about the action button in here, for example, one of the things that it links to in here is that now you can hold my action. I can hold my action button down in my Apple Watch 1 even, and I can then select what I want the action button to do. Before, I had to go into like the settings menu, and I just left it on flashlight all the time. Well, now I can even do a Shazam. I can have it to where it can be a Shazam, or then I can change it back to flashlight. I mean, I know there's all kinds of ways that you can sort of automate some of this, but this was a great article. I'll make sure we have it in the show notes. Any others that you want to point out?
Oh, I mean, it's got all sorts of great stuff in here. I mean, things like giving yourself a pause for a day or a week or up to a year on your goal, on your circles and stuff. You can change all your circle goals. Little bitty things like whereas in the past, if you wanted to get to the notifications at the top of the watch, you would swipe from the top. Now you could actually just sort of spin your digital crown to do that. There's a lot of like little bitty little things here. Everybody that has upgraded to watchOS 10 should just take a quick look at this page and just learn the new stuff. Lots of cool.
Yeah, watchOS
all
11.
tiny, like totally tiny things. But one of these tiny things might really jump out to you as like, oh, that's cool.
Pinning the timers. Like I've got so many timers on my timer thing, and I use my watch always, constantly for timers. Now I can pin them up there. Here's another one that, thank goodness, exit sleep mode faster. So if you now again, you know, until this past week or so when you were having the Ultra and the Series 10, you didn't wear it to bed, but when I go to bed, I've got my sleep schedule turned on. So at night, the watch doesn't like blind me when I turn over at night, right? So it goes into a sleep mode, which is great. I love it. But before, this was, I think, a year or so ago, before watchOS 10, I had to like double click, I think, the bottom button. And then the last year with watchOS 10, now I had to hold down the digital crown, and I'm like, I'm half awake. I just want to see the time, or I want to go into it. Well, now, thank goodness, now I can just press the digital crown around, you know, and it will come on now. In other words, I can exit the sleep mode faster. Thank goodness. Lots of little tiny things like that, like you said, which is just great.
It's a tiny little thing, but it makes a difference.
iPhone 16, you got the Pro Max, and it sounds like you're having a good time. I would love to hear, how has it been this past week with the brand new camera control button, not really a button, trackpad thing on the side?
Well, before we get to here, I want to talk about one other topic, Brett, which is this.
Oh, please. Okay.
I have not yet posted my full review of the iPhone. I'm about 80% done with it. It'll be posted probably on Monday. I'm almost there. There's a couple more things I want to test with it. But the one thing that I have done is I have, of course, moved from my old iPhone to my new iPhone. And when you do so, there's a couple different ways. We've all done it in the past. There's really 4 different ways that you can move from your old phone to your new phone. One thing that you can do is something called Quick Start, which is where you put the 2 phones close to each other and you sort of keep both of them there. You don't really use them, and they transfer the data. And Quick Start is always something to me, maybe because I had too much nonsense on my phone, but it's a process that seems like it should take 5 minutes and would always take at least 45 minutes. And sometimes it would seem like my phone
Yeah.
freezes during the process. It gets a little bit better every year. Many of us have done it, but that's the quick start process. And that's one way to go. Another way to go is you can back up your old phone to the iCloud, which hopefully it's doing all the time anyway.
Yeah.
And then you can restore the new phone from iCloud, which happens in the background.
It's the way I do it every time.
It's a great way to do it. That's a really good way to do it. A third way is you can plug in your old phone to a computer, whether it's a Mac or a PC.
Oh, yeah.
You can back it up to the computer. This is the way that we used to have to do it. And then you can plug it in and you can restore from the backup.
Right.
Yeah. And I should mention actually that on that first method, the quick start, one of the changes that I think is new this year is instead of having the two iPhones wirelessly talk to each other, you can actually take a cable. Maybe they allowed this last year too, but you can connect the old iPhone to the new iPhone with like the USB-C or the Lightning cable, whatever, and you can actually have it transfer data over the cable. And if you're in a situation where you don't have, appropriate Wi-Fi or whatever else, I mean, that might be something to think about. So those are the three methods to directly move things over. But there's always been that fourth method, and it's the one that most people don't do, and I had never done before, but it's what I did this year, which is start fresh. And this is a big one because this basically means like there's no backup. I just start with the new phone, and whatever apps I want to install, I do them one at a time, app after app after app. And for every one of those apps, if I download the Fantastical app, I have to log into Fantastical. And if I download the 1Password app, I log into 1Password. And it takes some time to do. So why did I do this crazy method, which takes so much time to do? This is true whether you're moving from computer to computer, anytime year after year after year, you're moving things from one device to another. Sometimes just a little bit of cruft just gets, that's the technical term, it's just something gets passed on from generation to generation that over the years, I just find can sort of make the new computer or the new iPhone or the new whatever it is just not as sort of clean and fresh as it should be. And Apple tries to account for this. They really do. But there's just something that's there. It's sort of an intangible. I've had a problem with my phone for the last couple of years, and it's occurred not just with the iPhone 15 I had last year, but the 14 I had before, where my particular car that I drive, the Honda Accord, the CarPlay was just it was not working very well. Sometimes I'd be driving around and it would like freeze and lose the connection. And I brought it to Honda, and unfortunately there's nothing they can do. Like those CarPlay units, car manufacturers, whatever's installed in your car, that's what it is.
They're like, talk to Apple.
So as I read about all the different things, the one thing that I had read online that some people said they had success with was basically starting from completely fresh, because CarPlay is controlled from within your iPhone, right? Not the iPhone tells what to do. And so I just figured, let me at least I have a new iPhone. Let's give it a shot. Now, that was the reason I did this. And I will tell you, I've had it for a week now. Let me knock on some wood. So far, my CarPlay has been perfect for the last week, but this is just so, even under the old system, I would sometimes have a perfect week. So I need to go a few more weeks before I can decide if this has actually solved it. My hope is that maybe it has, but the side result of doing this, of starting fresh with my phone is, I have been backing up phone to phone since 2008, and you would not believe the number of apps that I have on my phone, Brett, that I haven't touched.
I can believe it.
In a decade. So many apps. Yeah. And so what I did on my two phones is, on my on my new phone, I was like, okay, let's look at all the apps I have on my first page, many of which are the built-in apps. And I got those set up. And I'm like, let me get all the apps on my second page. And I get those set up. And then I have a third page too, which has got some folders. I got all those set up. And then once I installed all of those, then on my new phone, I went to the App Store, and there's a way that you can, under the App Store, you can see all of the apps that you own that are not yet installed on this phone.
Right.
And I just went through that list, and some of them I was like, oh yeah, I do want to have that. That's my bank app. I want to have my bank app. But there were so many. when I say there were hundreds of apps that I did not install on this new phone, so
I'm at
many
358 apps on my phone. You can go into your About in general, and that's just I probably maybe use at the very most, maybe 23, 24, I would say. And I have 358. That's insane.
Yeah.
How many are you at now? Because I would guess you have at least
general about, let's see, applications. I'm at 135 right now. And if I pulled out my new phone, I'm sure that my old phone was probably over 400. So just in terms of, I just don't need that stuff on there. Just having a nice clean front. So I will tell you this, it took me a long time. Last Saturday night, the way that Jeff spent his exciting Saturday night last weekend is I just sat there installing app after app. And every time I put an app in, you'd have to log in with your email, you'd have to put your password in. Of course, 1Password makes that easier. So it took a long time. I had to set up so many, here's an example of a tiny little thing I had to set up. On my iPad, I noticed that I was seeing all of my messages when I would text somebody like you, but then every once in a while I wasn't seeing text messages, and I realized, oh, wait a minute, the SMS text messages were not going over, because that's another one of those settings that I had to turn on the iPhone, and I did 10 years ago, but so it's just another, so there's so many settings, but the process has made me sort of rethink things like, do I want to have that setting on? Do I want to have that turned on? So again, I am not at all encouraging that people do this every year, but I will say that if you do it once every like 15 years, like I just did, it actually does give you sort of a chance to sort of rethink, what do you really want to have in your new phone? What's worth taking up space, et cetera, et cetera. So hopefully it has fixed my CarPlay experience. We shall see. It has absolutely allowed me to sort of rethink what I want to have on my phone, which I think has been valuable. So, it takes time.
I see the reasoning there. I do this on the computer every time, Jeff. When I get a new computer, this is exactly what I do. Because here I am thinking you're crazy. Like, why would you not use an iCloud backup? That's ridiculous. But on a computer, that's exactly what I do. Now, that just might be because of years and years of doing computers, and every time I get a new one, I don't want to like do a backup. I don't want to do a migration. I'm just like, I'm going to start fresh, and I do that. But I've always thought for computers, that's one thing. Of course, now we call this an iPhone, but it really is a computer that can make phone calls. And I just had never thought about that. Now, a quick question. You still had to log in with your iCloud account on your new phone, right?
Yeah.
It's just that when you did so, because I'm assuming you took it out of the box, you would log in, because that's the first thing it asks you for is your iCloud account. But then you just say, do not restore from a backup, because that's the next screen that comes up, right? And it'll ask you, do you want to restore from a local backup, or a wireless backup, or an iCloud backup, or whatever. And you just said no.
One of the options is set up as a new phone, as if I was going to have two iPhones. Because I mean, in theory, you could have two iPhones if you wanted. Just like some people have two Apple Watches. If you wanted to have two Apple Watches, you could. If you wanted to have two iPhones, and so then I just set it up as new. Now I will tell you that some of my apps were smart enough that once I downloaded the app from the App Store, it keeps its settings in my iCloud, and so I didn't really have to do anything. It was actually smart enough to like say, oh, okay, you've already purchased this app, and here's your settings, and it did all of its stuff. And I was like, oh, that was nice. Other apps, I had to like manually say, hey, by the way, app, I've used you before. Don't forget, here's the settings.
Here's my account.
And so some apps were quick, some apps took a little bit more time, but yeah, that was it. And so then when I'm completely done, I mean, my old iPhone, which I now don't, but is completely 100% working, within the next day or two, I'm going to wipe it. I'm going to bring it to the Apple Store. I'm going to see how much money they'll give me for it, and go from there. So
well, that's because I knew there's some settings that were saved in your iCloud account. Anyway, you address that, and that's what I was saying, because it's like I know there's some things that are saved there, or that the setup in the way, especially with like the Photos app and stuff like that. Most of that should have come down, but you're talking about which I really kind of like. Because again, I admit, at first I'm thinking you're nuts. Like, this is ridiculous. Why would you go through all that craziness? But now I'm looking at my apps. I'm thinking about your issue. I do this on the computer already. Yeah, it will take a little bit of time to go do that. But okay, well, thank you for sharing. I'm glad. And we'll see, right? In the next few weeks, we'll see if it actually fixes that CarPlay issue.
Even if it doesn't, I still think now that I've done all the work, I actually sort of think it was worth it just to sort of start fresh and, take away the apps. I mean, for example, I had like a dozen different weather apps. I don't need a dozen weather apps. I know the three that I like. That's all I need, things like that. So.
Okay, so now that you've got the new iPhone, you've been using it for a week, let us know, how are you liking that camera control? I mean, really, that's the main thing I'm going to be asking about, because I mean, I know it's better, it's faster, it's shinier, it's a better camera, but the camera control is the main difference from, like, at least from a hardware perspective.
Yeah, I think there's two differences from a hardware perspective. If you have the Pro model, it's a little bit bigger screen. So, but let's put that to the
Yes.
side. But the other
Okay.
big difference for all four iPhone 16s, whether it's the Pro or the non-Pro, is that camera
Sure.
control. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm really liking it. I had used
Okay.
it just a tiny bit when you and I talked last week on the
Last
air. I
week.
mean,
Right.
I had just done the unboxing. I've now taken tons and tons of pictures with it,
I'm sure.
and I tell you what, it's really nice. You know, one of the reviews that I linked to was a guy named Harry McCracken from Fast Company. He says,
Oh
like, for the
yeah.
first time, I really feel like my iPhone is a camera, and this is I agree. I
It's an
mean,
eye camera.
when you
Eye
have this
camera.
dedicated button on it, just like if you had like a dedicated camera, it's going to always take pictures. You're going to always jump to that mode. It's really nice. I have found that I'm using it just as a way to quickly launch the camera and take pictures all the time. The other feature of the
Right.
camera control is that you can sort of half press on it and you know, to bring up the little fiddly controls to change things and stuff. I'm definitely doing that, but I find that I don't
Okay.
change a lot of the other features that often. Like for example, just the other day, I was going into one of the things you can control under the camera control is the f-stop, which allows you to change the aperture of it. Because
Right.
sometimes, just from an artistic standpoint, if you make the aperture, I forget if it's either really big or really small, whichever one it is, but it makes it so
One of
that
those.
the things that are in the background look like they're fuzzy, you know, like that bokeh
Right.
effect,
The
and the
blurry.
things that are in
Yeah.
the foreground, it actually gives you like sometimes it's really cool for a picture. The thing that's in the foreground is sharp and focus, and everything in the background is a
Right.
little blurry. It gives you that sort of dimensional feel to pictures, and so I
Hmm.
have played around with that a little bit, and it's really nice to have it right underneath your finger with the camera control. But most of the time, the only thing I'm changing with the camera control is which lens I'm using. Am I using the regular
Oh,
lens?
okay.
Am I zooming
Okay.
in and going to that 5x lens? And I find that I really like that. It's nice to have that right underneath your finger. You don't have to take your watch away from your hand, look at your watch, excuse me.
That's
You don't
right.
have to
I
take your
do that.
iPhone away, look at the
Yep.
screen, press it, and
I
then
do
hold it
that all
back
the
up again.
time.
You just keep
Right.
everything in your hand and then control everything with the button. It's nice. So
Oh,
if
that is
you
nice.
use your
Okay.
iPhone to take pictures and videos a lot, the camera control gets a big thumbs up for me. It's
Okay.
something that I did not know I would find useful. And kudos to Apple for testing it in their labs and saying, hey, you know, this is actually worth adding a button for. It is. It's really nice.
And it looks like that there are some settings in here. This is the story you linked to on MacRumors from Tim Hardwick, that you can go into some of the camera control.
A
You can
lot.
change maybe some of the pressure on,
Hmm.
how hard you want to click or tap or whatever they're calling it here.
Hmm.
How to change some of your adjustments on there. I did not realize that they were going to allow you to customize how you're going to interact with that little camera control trackpad thingy. And that's great. I mean, I'm thrilled to see that.
I've read other people say, "Oh, I don't like it because I feel like it's too sensitive." Well, you can decrease the sensitivity.
You can
And I've seen
change
other
that.
people say, "Oh, no, it's not sensing me enough." Well, that's you can adjust. You can either through the regular settings or the accessibility settings, you can change so much about the camera control, even to the point that if you find that you're accidentally triggering it by mistake, you can disable it if you want. I mean, then it's like not having a camera control button at all. But if you wanted to do that, you could do it too. So you can adjust everything about it. You can adjust in settings, which is really nice.
I really did enjoy this Harry McCracken article that you linked to. I mean, he even starts off with saying what we said before: the best camera is the one that you have with you. But I found this interesting because he uses what a Canon camera, a DLSR, and this is what you've talked about quite a bit too, Jeff, to where I think Harry says he's come down to in the past, he's picked up a phone hoping that it would be kind of his primary camera, but it doesn't sound like until the iPhone 16 Pro has he really kind of jumped on that. Like, if I don't know, if it sounds like he would leave his Canon at home now. And you've talked about this quite a bit too, but
Yeah.
I'm glad to see that, somebody like Harry McCracken's been doing this for a long time, who has seen many phones with cameras on there. But it sounds like he's even pretty excited about how this camera control is enabling him to take whatever he needs at whatever time.
Yeah, I used to be such a big fan of my Nikon DSLR camera because it took such beautiful pictures. It still does take beautiful pictures, but you need to, you know, sometimes it takes a great picture on its own, but other times you need to really fiddle with it a lot. Whereas the iPhone is effortless and it sometimes takes pictures that are much better than my Nikon. Other times they're not quite as good, but the difference is so small and it's just so
Right.
easy to pick it up and take a picture that, yeah, I almost never, it really, there has to be a very special reason for me to pick up my SLR camera nowadays because the iPhone's just so good.
Before we move off the iPhone, there was one other article that you posted today, which I just found pretty
Yeah.
amazing. And I was thankful because I've always wondered this, but I was never going to change this setting. This is from Juli Clover at MacRumors, that she set her battery, what is it, the battery limit on her iPhone 15 to 80%. You know, I get this all the time, and we've talked about battery levels on the iPhones for years and years, right? And we know that Apple does some magic trickery, hackery stuff in the background to kind of make sure that the battery lasts as long as what people would like it to. But you can go in, and now, what is it, 3 or 4 years ago, they had the battery health capacitor in there, right? To where you could go in and see how healthy is your battery. Because we all know that the batteries are going out, you know, over the course of a lifetime of an iPhone. It's not going to always charge up to 100%, right? It just can't do that. But this was interesting. You can probably do a better job of explaining. Juli set hers at 80%. She used it, I guess, for like almost a year, she said.
Right.
And she wanted to see if there was any difference in how that affected the battery life. And she found it really didn't make too much of a difference. So thank you, Juli.
Yeah, this is one of these things. It's not an old wives' tale. I mean, there's actually something to it. We've been using these lithium-ion batteries in our devices, iPhones, Apple Watch, you know, all devices for a very long time. And all of us have heard in the back of our head, well, you don't want to charge it too much because the more that you charge a battery,
Right.
specifically the more that you go all from 0 to 100, you wear out the battery over time. Now, Apple, as you said, has done all sorts of trickery to try to adjust that and get the maximum battery life without, you know, to deal with those limitations. But some people have said, no, I don't want to do that. I just want to make sure that I don't always completely recharge. And so last year, Apple enabled this feature that said you can turn it on in settings. And every time you charge your iPhone, once you get to 80%, it'll stop. It won't charge that last 20%, with the exception like once every 20 cycles or something like that. It would go even higher. And so if you had that setting turned on, it meant that even if your iPhone was quote unquote fully charged, it wasn't fully charged. You only had an 80% charge, and then you couldn't use it for as long until you had to charge it again.
Right.
But some people would say, well, that's okay because I'm going to get a longer overall battery life as a result. And so she, you know, thank goodness that Juli decided to do this. She limited herself for an entire year, and then now that she's at that 1 year, she compared her battery health to a bunch of colleagues who did not have that feature turned on. And as you said, Brett, the difference is, I mean, so minor that it doesn't make a difference. That I suspect that and this is only 1 year, if you kept this feature turned on for 4 years, even then it doesn't make a huge difference. And yet for the last year, she's had to deal with the slight annoyance of not having a full battery charge, only an 80% battery charge. So if you're one of the people that thinks, oh, I'm familiar with that old wives' tale, I don't want to charge it all the way, I'm going to turn this setting on at use. I mean, this is just one data point. You know, maybe some of the people would disagree. Based upon what Juli Clover found, it's really not worth it. So keep that in mind if you're thinking about whether it's worth turning on that feature.
The other wives' tale that I hear all the time is you should let your phone battery go all the way to 0, like, you know, use it all the way up because that's going to be healthier. Then you can charge it up. Don't, you know, keep charging it, like let it run down all the way. And I've never really bought into that. I've heard it all. And I think what I'm taking away from this story, not because it's the same thing that I'm talking about here, but it's like, you know what? Just don't worry about it too much.
Apple has figured that stuff out. Don't worry about it.
Exactly. Believe us, they have so much data with the millions and billions of phones that they have. They are tweaking everything to the point where unless you just for some reason got a defective battery, in which case go to the Apple store and let them look at it, I promise you it's going to be fine. And even I think you and I anecdotally can say, you know, just over the years of all the phones that we've been using, you're going to be okay. Don't worry about it. Don't stress about it. You've got many other things. It's almost like that thing in the iPhone that you can turn on the, you know, there's the battery indicator in the upper right corner. Some people will turn on the percentage. And so that you can see that, oh my goodness, I'm at 50%, I'm at 30%. And others I've seen say, don't even turn that on. Like, just don't stress out about that. You're going to be fine. You can just see the little indicator going back and forth. Anyway, that's my takeaway is like, don't worry about it. You're going to be fine. The batteries are going to be fine. You don't need to worry about anything on that. couple of articles you linked to about the AirPods 4. Now, we talked about this already. The brand new AirPods 4. This is not the AirPods Pro. This is not the AirPods Max. But Apple came out with not just one AirPods 4, but two versions of the AirPods 4. Good article here on 9 to 5 Mac from Benjamin Mayo, talking about the AirPods 4, hands-on with it, been using it for a few days, and he says that it's pretty good, even with the noise the active noise cancellation as well.
Yeah, if you're looking to get the lesser expensive AirPods, either because you want to spend less money, or for some people, they don't like having, I mean, I don't mind having the AirPods Pro completely taken up my ear, but some people don't like that feel, or because of the shape of your ear, it just, you don't want something filling it up. You'd rather have the traditional AirPod, which is a hard sort of plastic that sort of gets outside the ear, but doesn't completely fill up your ear canal. So if that's you, for either one of those reasons, less money, you don't like the Pros because they're the design of it, you now have the best AirPods ever. They have done, not only have they changed the shape of them to make them work even better for more people's ears, but if you get I think it's the $50 more version of it, it has this noise cancellation feature, which I think is the most interesting part of this, because it used to be that people would say, you can't have noise cancellation unless you completely cover your ear. Maybe because you're wearing like the old style bows that, look like, the Princess Leia bones in your ear, or maybe it's because you have the AirPod Pros that fill up your ear canal. And yet Apple found a way to, even though this thing does not completely fill up your ear, to do a pretty decent job of noise cancellation. And this article says it works pretty well. The other article that I linked to, which is an interesting one, is from Engadget, because those guys actually interviewed the people at Apple that designed it. And there's this funny story about how, like, back in the dark days of COVID, when people weren't even working on Apple's campus, like, there was this group of people in 2000 that said, we think we know how to come up with noise cancellation that will work with a device that doesn't completely fill your ear. It's not going to be as effective as the AirPods Pro, but it's going to be pretty good. And the article's sort of funny how they brought people in and they tested it. They're like, wow, this works better than I thought it would. And so, years later, after they actually make it into a shipping product, now what we have is you can get the best noise cancellation on the Pro or the Max. But if you just want pretty good noise cancellation, and something that doesn't fill up your ear canal, you now have that choice, which is really nice. And so, I think this is great. So, and again, if you don't want noise cancellation at all, you could save a little bit money by getting the cheapest version of the AirPods, the AirPods 4, that don't even have this feature. But if you're going to buy this for anybody, or certainly if you're going to buy it for yourself, I think it's worth, the reviews have been, I haven't tried it myself, but the reviews have been so unanimously positive of like, how is it this good? Everybody says the same thing. I did not believe that this would work, and it actually sort of does. So, so it sounds great.
And of course, I said this last week, if you're not doing 129, you're going to splurge and do 179. Why not splurge just a little bit more and get the AirPods Pro? The only thing that really bothers me about this new redesign of the AirPods regular is, in the past, he's got this great picture here in 9 to 5 Mac. On the left, he's got the AirPods 2, and on the right is the AirPods 4. The AirPods regular used to have a longer stem that would hang out of your ear, but now with the AirPods 4, you can see that the stem is much shorter. In fact, it looks almost exactly like an AirPods Pro. I would go around the public when I would walk around and go at airports and stuff, Jeff. I could tell immediately if somebody had regular AirPods versus the AirPods Pro. Now I can't tell the difference because the stem is almost like the exact same. It's like I could always say, like, oh, you've got the upgraded version. Now I won't know any better, and maybe that's better for the cause. Who knows? You like your Apple Vision Pro, and a lot of other people do as well. Well, good news, Meta, the parent company of Facebook, has announced a brand new competitor to Apple Vision Pro, which they apparently will not actually ever sell. But from a concept perspective, you linked to this story from The Verge, and who was this? Alex Heath, who did an absolutely amazing video, I think, on this. And if nothing else, Jeff, this just underscores everything you've been saying, I think, for the past year or so, or the past few months since you've had your Apple Vision Pro. It's like this could be sort of like the next evolutionary step in what the Apple Vision Pro could become. At least that's what I took away from watching this video you linked to today.
I agree. I love using my Apple Vision Pro today, but it's too big and it's too expensive. And you find yourself saying, can they reduce the size to something that's about the size of a pair of glasses? And what Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook / Meta have shown is you can. You can, because these devices called the Orion, again, they're still a little bit bigger than a pair of glasses, but they do sort of look like glasses. And the people that have tried them out, including Alex in this article, have said they feel like a pair of glasses. They're not super heavy on your face, and they do work. Now, they take a different approach, unlike the Vision Pro, which reproduces the outside world with incredibly high quality, basically little 4K displays for each eye. In this, you're actually seeing the outside world because you're looking through the quote unquote glass. And a lot of people have said that maybe this is the way to go, and maybe this is the way that Apple will go in the future too. But they're superimposing things on the outside world. And again, it's not really fair to compare this to the Vision Pro because this is not a shipping product, and Meta says that if they actually tried to sell these, they would cost way more than $10,000 a piece
like
and
stuff.
So they're just it's they're just showing it's much like a concept car that will never actually be developed in real life.
Right.
This is like that, but it's something that does actually work, and it's pretty, I mean, this is the future. So, again, my takeaway here is if this is what Meta is showing to the world today, I'm sure that in those secret labs in Cupertino, they have things that are equal to this. They're just not showing the world because Apple's not ready to sell it. And it really makes me, I was hoping that this sort of product can exist, and this proves to me that we're going to get there. It may be 5 years from now, it may be 10 years from now, who knows? But we're going to get to the point where you have the advantages of a Vision Pro in something that's as small as a pair of glasses, and that's going to be amazing because you're going to be able to have augmented reality to the world around you, but you'll be able to wear something all the time. I'm really looking forward to this. So I'm glad that Meta decided to show this to the world because I think it's really cool.
Yeah, agreed. And it's not just the glasses. In fact, Alex does a great job in the video of showing you the glasses obviously have cameras on them. You can see through it. That's where you can look and see the screens that you have up. But it's paired with a neural wristband, which at first I'm thinking, well, that sounds a little crazy. But just watching him interact with like different hand gestures and everything that translated directly to the actual glasses, that was amazing. Like, I mean, he was using things like scrolling, things like, rubbing his finger and thumb together, and then obviously tapping, together, that kind of a thing. There's also a third component. Looks like, to me, it sounded like it's like a hard drive where it kind of offloads a lot of the information. So all of these three devices work together wirelessly, which I think is great because, again, to the Vision Pro, most people don't see that. It has to be connected to an actual battery pack, right? You have to have that. I mean, that doesn't look so good in a commercial, so they don't usually show it very much. But it's like that is something that you have to be wired to. So, again, just underscoring this idea of I think that's a perfect analogy to a concept car, right? It's like, we go to car shows, we see these concept cars, we can't get in them yet, but it shows what can be done.
But what's interesting to me is these three parts that Meta is using. Can't you imagine, like in the Apple world, like right now, a Vision Pro knows what you're doing with your hands because it has cameras that look down at your hands.
Right.
And what Meta is doing instead is they have something on your wrist that's measuring the whatever you can measure on a wrist.
Muscles,
but Apple,
and
Apple already has that with the Apple Watch. Can't you imagine a future world where the glasses are like this? Instead of using the band that Meta has, you use your Apple Watch. And in terms of having like a computer that wirelessly communicates with the glasses, we have that. It's called the iPhone.
Yeah.
So, I mean, can't you imagine a world where you have a future Vision Pro that works with your iPhone, that works with your Apple Watch, much like there's the three parts to this Orion product? You can totally see this happening. It's really interesting.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I'm so glad that you're following this so closely on there as well. Last little video we have to show. I was laughing this morning so hard. Jimmy Kimmel, Tonight Show. I like Jimmy. Not Kimmel. I'm sorry. Fallon.
Jimmy Fallon.
Different Jimmy. Sorry about that. Jimmy Fallon on the Tonight Show. I don't know how many days ago this was, but he's sitting at his desk like usual and goes, "Hey, I went to the iconic Cube Apple Store on Fifth Avenue," and he was there getting his brand new iPhone, and sure enough, who walks up? None other than Tim Cook. And I love that obviously this was all kind of played out, but Jimmy has on his Vision Pro. I don't want to give everything away. He's got on his Vision Pro, so he's like, "Hey, my Vision Pro looks like that Tim Cook is standing right in front of me." And he reaches out and he's like pawing at Tim's face. I just was laughing so hard at that. And then they walk together through Central Park. Jimmy even tries to buy Tim Cook a hot dog or something. And then he's like talking like, "Hey, when you started at Apple, were you known as Timmy Cook?" And I just got this, like, Tim Cook was kind of like, no, maybe TC, but not Timmy. And then the last thing quickly I loved about this, they are literally walking through Central Park and other places in New York. And some of this you can tell is staged, but others, I was laughing so hard at the people around. Some of these people were just like, can you guys get out of my way? I'm trying to jog here. Like, come on, move around, please, okay? I don't care who you are. I don't care what you do. Like, you're one of the most powerful corporate people in the entire world. But, I got to get to work. Get out of my way. Great.
It's a cute video.
Yeah.
My two big thoughts of it is, number one, Tim Cook's a good sport because he played around with the low jokes that Jimmy Fallon did. And then number two, I like you enjoyed looking at the background because you have a few people in the background that are like, hey, it's Jimmy Fallon and Tim Cook, and they're taking videos with their iPhones.
Right.
And then you have a lot of other people,
of course.
Like you said, they're just nonchalant New Yorkers trying to get on with their day. They could care less who's walking around.
They're like, come on.
It's fun. So it's a cute little video. It's funny. It's a funny little video worth watching.
I'll make sure it has a link. In the know. I thought we could do just a couple. I mean, there's so many things we've been talking about iOS 18. Favorite iOS 18 tip so far. This one I found not on a blog that normally I would look for from the technology standpoint, Jeff, but this is one of my travel blogs where this person was excited that the iPhone calculator, the built-in calculator, now has a very handy currency conversion tool. Now, I don't know 100% if this was in there before. I don't think it was, but I just thought this was so cool. I actually have used, as you know, another app, a calculator app for many, many years, CalcBot, which has actually had this built in. But if you pull up the basic built-in calculator in your iPhone, and you type in the number 5 for like $5 and you want to convert that into Japanese yen, in the bottom left corner, there's that little calculator button, right? If you tap on that, you can see convert. And one of the things that you can convert to when you turn that on is it'll convert it from a currency. And as my blogger here talks about, it actually updates from Yahoo Finance, and you can see how long ago that it last updated. And then you can change the currency by just tapping the little up and down arrow. So you can go $5 is equal to 714 Japanese yen. And then you can change that and you can swap it back and forth. I just love that. Like, these are, the calculator is I think it's one of those apps that a lot of people use probably a lot during the day. And I'm just glad to see that Apple, the calculator app has not gotten a lot of love from Apple over all the years, both on the iPhone and certainly on the iPad. But I just like the fact that they're bringing in just little tiny tweaks in there. And there's a few other things that were built in too, but I just wanted to highlight the conversion thing. I mean, by the way, the calculator got a bunch of love this past, iOS 18, right? With sort of the math notes. I mean, that's a little bit of a different aspect on there, but I just like the fact that still, even with the calculator that's been around from probably day one, I think it was one of the first original apps that they had in there. But the fact that now that you can pull this up and do a little bit more just inside. And by the way, on the conversion side, there's a whole bunch of other units. You can do area, angle, data, energy, force. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that you can do in there. But most of the time, it's just great to be able to use it for a currency converter.
Yeah, that's really cool. I agree. I don't know if this is the interface part of it is certainly new. Maybe you could do this behind the scenes before, but this is really cool. That's a nice pick. I like that. What my pick of the week for something that's new in iOS 18 is the entire settings app has been reorganized in iOS 18, and I think it makes a lot more sense now. There's better divisions. One of the things the settings app used to do is at the bottom of the settings app, it would list all of your apps, and the list would go on forever. Just to tidy things up, there's now just the word apps at the bottom of settings, and then you tap on that to see all of your apps. But the one new thing in settings I was going to highlight today is the new section called privacy and security. And Apple has taken things that before iOS 18 used to be in a whole bunch of different places, and they basically put all of them under privacy and security. And it's a way that makes sense. So if you open up your settings app and you go to privacy and security, now you can have like different sections for things like who has access to location services, who has access to all these other to your microphone, all the different things that have something to do with how much access or these different apps having, and then you can go to each one and you can set the things for each one of the apps. And so you now have a central place to go to sort of see, do all of my apps have the right permissions? Because you don't want your apps looking at things that you don't necessarily want. But then other apps, you're like, I'm totally fine with them having access to my pictures. And so now there's like a very central place that you can go. In fact, one of the things that I've noticed that I don't think was there before, but if you go to the privacy and security, we've all had the things happen that you download a new app, and one of the things that they ask you is, do you want to allow this app to track other things that you have? And you're like, no, I don't, because the only reason they're doing that is for marketing purposes. And so now, if you go under privacy and security, the second choice is called tracking, and at the very top where it says allow apps to request to track, I turned it off. And so now none of those apps are going to allow me because I'm never going to say yes. And if I change my mind on any particular app, I can always go turn it on. So that's nice. So it's just a nice sort of reorganization of stuff, and it's worth checking out. Helpful. Again, the whole settings app is reorganized in a way that makes sense, but I particularly like the way that they've done it under privacy and security. So if you haven't taken a look at that in iOS 18, it's worth taking a look at.
It seems like even at the very basic, if you tap into anything on here, first of all, they put all the apps together in one thing. But whatever you tap into, now at the very top, there is a little description of exactly what you do in this section. And at first I was like, that's a lot of screen real estate you're stealing away. But I'm like, now I look at it like, you know what? Thank you, because I've always wondered, like, what is it that I might be doing in maybe like the focus aspect, or even when you go into general. Anyway, just kind of like the fact that they have reorganized this. I need to spend a little time in the settings app. I feel like that could be even just a great blog post, just going through the way that they reorganize a lot of that settings app. But thank you for highlighting that privacy and security. That's in fact helpful as well.
In terms of the overview feature, like if I'm in privacy and security and I look at the word photos, before I even tap on it to see all the different apps, right there in the top, it's telling me that I currently have 3 apps that have full access to my photos, and then 2 apps that only have the ability to add to my photos but not see them all. So that's even before, and like then I can tap it and I can actually get into specifics, but it's a nice little overview of, okay, so there's only 3, and I'm going to change this over time, because again, I've been setting up my iPhone from scratch, but it's really nicely done. So bravo to Apple for doing that.
That is so good. Excellent. I mean, and then there's like the messages thing. I've been messing around this past week with new messages. And then there's the notes. The notes app even looks a little bit better. Okay, more stuff that we can talk about. And so we shall do that at least by next week, maybe the next several weeks. So we'll talk with you next week, Jeff.
Thanks, Brett. Bye-bye, everybody.